What is the biblical view on security and defending yourselves or your loved ones, please? Okay. Is the Christian necessarily a wimp?
No.
No, he's not a wimp.
Mm-mm.
But his weapons are not carnal.
Yes.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So Peter had a sword, and he tore it out, and he went hack, and he cut an ear off. And the Lord picked up the ear and put it back. That should have told that person something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, put back your sword. And he said, there are two swords. And then he said, it's enough.
It's enough.
All right, now Roman Catholicism likes to interpret this in their way. They like to interpret it that the two swords are the sword of the civil power, and then the sword of the religious power, and that the sword of the religious power is above the sword of the secular power. The one is subject to the other, just as the spiritual is higher than the secular. So that's how they interpret it. So they believe they have both swords. But that's not what the Lord said. He said, put it back.
Yeah.
And then Peter started using a Roman Catholic argument and said, oh, I've got two. And Jesus, knowing how long it would take to explain that, once said, oh, it's enough. Put it away.
Yeah.
Our weapons, says the Bible, are not carnal. So, we trust in God. Now, when I became a Christian, I also had guns. I don't have them anymore. I got rid of them. And I like to trust that God will take care of all things. Now, do bad things happen to obedient people as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely.
Does God know about it?
Yes.
Has He got things under control?
Yes.
Are there thousands and thousands of stories out there of God intervening?
And there's
Absolutely.
also the other part. So.
All right, let's take a few stories in the Bible. When they wanted to throw Jesus off the edge of the cliff, He just walked through them, right?
Yeah.
Now, apparently, the spirit of prophecy tells us that angels were all around Him, and they basically blinded the people. Not that they were physically blind, but that they couldn't see what was happening, and he was gone, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard of stories like that. I once had to go into a very dangerous area where just prior to the time when I was invited to go and speak in that area, there were a number of incidences where people had been killed. And the way in which they were killing them was very brutal. It was called necklacing.
Oh, yes.
That's where you put a tire around someone's neck, filled it with gasoline, and set the person alight. I mean, it's a pretty horrendous death, right? And I was umming and ahhing whether one should enter under these circumstances. But I felt it was a call, and my wife felt that if I'm going to go, she's going to go along. And if she's going to go along, the kids are going to go along.
Okay.
So the whole family got into the car. And just the day before, people had been killed there. And when we entered that area, there were people standing there with rifles, with AK-47s. And they were looking for anyone that was coming in there, into that area. And we turned in and we said a prayer, and they looked right through us. They didn't react, nothing. We drove right past them, and we were stunned. We went in, We spent the day with brothers and sisters living in that community. Marvelous time, preaching and giving lectures, having a meal together. No social distancing at that time.
Yes.
No masks to hide our identity. And then it was time to go back home. It was like running the gauntlet, right? And we said a prayer, and everybody was of one accord, got into our cars. Same thing. They were still standing there. They were looking in one direction when we came from the other. Nobody batted an eyelid. So my question is, did they just ignore us? Or did they not see us?
They probably didn't see you.
They probably didn't see me, right?
Their eyes were...
They were closed. Not physically closed, but they just didn't register.
Yeah.
So who can do things like that?
God.
God can do that. There's many points in the Bible like that. So what happens if you find that someone is beating up, let's say, your wife or your children? Would you stand idly by and do nothing? If it is within your capability, would you do something?
No.
I certainly would. I would do what I can.
Yes.
I wouldn't have a weapon, so even if I did something, I would have to do it together with God. And there are many cases where there are reports of people that were seriously in trouble and prayed, and then someone would appear, and either a high-ranking official or a very large person, and these people would scatter. And then when you turn around to thank the person, that person is gone. I know of many experiences like that. So trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. That's Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6, I think. It's one of my favorite verses.
Amen.
So, yes, it's something that one has to experience. It's something that one has to learn. As far as is possible, be of a gentle spirit. I had an interesting case some time ago. I was in South America, and I was doing a campaign in South America. And a young lady came up to me, and she said that she had been through many of my series, and that she and her husband and her children were sitting, and they were going through the series when there was an attack on their home. And 3 robbers came in with guns, and they held the husband and the children at gunpoint, while one of them grabbed her and dragged her to a bedroom. And what was she going to do? And they were studying the Bible, and they were making decisions to follow God. And so she prayed and said, Lord, what must I do? I mean, this was a very serious situation for her, and probably they were going to kill her husband and her children. And then she went to the attacker and gave him a hug and told him that God loves him. And he got very furious. And then eventually he screamed at her and says, he's a criminal, God doesn't love him. And she said, yes, he does. And so he didn't do what he was going to do, but dragged her violently back to her husband and her children and threw her basically down, and there she was. And they were all held at gunpoint. And she kept saying to them, to all 3 of them now, that God loved them. And 2 of them threw their weapons down and ran out. They left their weapons behind. Yeah. They ran out. And then the 3rd one, if I remember the story correctly, was the one that had dragged her to the room. he lingered and said, but God can't love him. And she says, yes, he does. He must read the Bible. He says he doesn't have a Bible. And they were busy with the Bible, so that she took her Bible and gave it to him. And then he threw his weapon down and ran out with the Bible. So he exchanged his weapon for a better weapon.
For a better weapon.
So that's my philosophy. This is my weapon. Not
Amen.
this thing, but
Yes.
but this. This is a tool.
Yeah.
But this is the weapon. Yes.
Yes, thank you.